Welcome back to Meet Me for Murder. I'm your host, Rachel Colo, and each week we dive into a true crime case that will stay with you long after the story ends. Today's case takes us to one of my favorite places, Mesa, Arizona, and into one of the most infamous murder trials in modern true crime history, a case involving obsession, jealousy, religion, manipulation, and a relationship so toxic that it eventually ended in violence. Also, today's case is going to involve the LDS religion or the Mormon religion, which I'm really excited about because I grew up going to that church. And so I'm going to have some lore and some different insights to share with you as we go through this. On June 9th, 2008, Travis Alexander was supposed to be preparing for a work trip to Cancun, Mexico. Friends and coworkers expected to hear from him, but calls and texts were going unanswered. And if you're supposed to go to Cancun and no one's hearing from you, that's not good. For people who knew Travis, that wasn't normal. He was outgoing, social, and always connected. As the silence continued, concerns started to grow. Eventually, friends decided to check on him at his home in Mesa. And what good friends! I one time was on Do not disturb with one of my friends, and I didn't talk to her all day, and she literally came to my house to make sure I was okay. Everyone needs a friend like that, right? We all need someone who's going to come check on us and make sure we're okay. So love his friends for this. When they arrived, his car was still outside. Inside the home, something immediately felt wrong. As they searched the house, someone noticed blood. Then they found Travis curled in the shower, covered in blood. The scene was horrific. Also 30, you guys. 30 is so young. I hate that. He had been stabbed dozens of times. His throat had been slashed, and he had also been shot in the head. You guys, no. No, this is already too dark. Investigators immediately believed this wasn't random violence. The attack felt personal, angry, emotional, and incredibly brutal. And you know what? I'm going to agree with that. And according to many of Travis's friends, one person came to mind almost immediately: Jodi Arias. At that point, Jodi was simply Travis's ex-girlfriend. Some people described her as charming and artistic. Others saw her as possessive and unable to let go. Sounds like a lot of ex-girlfriends I know. But before we get into Jodi, we need to understand Travis. Travis Alexander wasn't born into an easy life. He grew up in a difficult home where both of his parents struggled with drug addiction. Eventually, he moved in with his grandparents in California, where he was introduced to the Mormon faith. LDS is Latter-day Saints, and then they're known as the Mormons, but the full church name is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Fun fact. For Travis, religion brought structure and purpose. He later moved to Mesa, Arizona, which is a largely Mormon population. Most people think it's just Utah, but it's also Arizona. After he moved to Mesa, he became involved with Legal Shield and built a successful life for himself. Friends described him as charismatic, ambitious, and someone who had worked hard to create the future he wanted. In September of 2006, Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias met at a Legal Shield conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. By all accounts, the chemistry was instant. They met at a group dinner at the Rainforest Cafe, and what started as a casual introduction quickly turned into hours of conversation. They reportedly stayed up talking until around 4 a.m, discussing life, goals, religion, and the future. At the time, Jodi was living in California and was still in another relationship. But not long after meeting Travis, she ended things with her boyfriend. Travis was living in Arizona, but the two stayed in constant contact. And when I say constant, I mean constant. Reports later said they exchanged tens of thousands of messages. This was not casual dating. This became intense very quickly. And I will say, when you hit it off the bat with someone, that's just how things naturally progress. So I don't think there's anything alarming or weird about this. Travis also introduced Jodi to his faith. He gave her a Book of Mormon, brought her into his religious world, and in November of 2006, Jodi was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or AKA the Mormon Church, which is kind of a big deal because as an LDS member, you want to share the gospel, share the church, and have as many people join as possible. And if he was thinking about dating this girl seriously and marrying her, I know they're friends at this point, but I could see in his head maybe thinking, oh, if she's baptized and a member, then like I can date her now. To outsiders, it looked romantic. Travis had met a beautiful woman, introduced her to his faith, and maybe this was heading towards marriage. But others would later wonder whether Jodi truly found religion or whether she was becoming exactly who Travis wanted her to be. Yup, I said it. By early 2007, Travis and Jodi were officially dating, but almost immediately, the relationship became complicated. Travis was publicly committed to his Mormon values, but privately, he and Jodi were sexually involved. That created guilt and conflict for Travis and confusion for the relationship. He wanted to live one way, but privately, he was making different choices. So, growing up in the faith, you're not supposed to have any sexy time with people other than your husband or wife. So before you're married, you don't want to do that. So this is why Travis is feeling like guilty because he's kind of doing something wrong for what he believes in. And Jodi became deeply attached. Friends later say she seemed possessive and fixated on Travis. She allegedly monitored who he talked to, hacked into his MySpace account. I forgot that even existed, read private messages, and became jealous of other women in his life. Okay, so this is sounding pretty toxic really fast. Eventually, Travis's friends started warning him. They felt Jodi was too intense, too controlling, too obsessed. And Travis began trying to end the relationship. So I don't know whether it was Jodi's behavior that got to him or his friends, but it seems like Travis is like, okay, yeah, no, this isn't a good fit. This has got to go. And Travis began trying to end the relationship, but the breakup never really stayed final. They would separate, reconnect, fight, flirt, and fall back into the same cycle. Travis would try to move on, but Jodi never seemed fully gone. Then Jodi moved from California to Arizona and began living only 10 minutes away from Travis. So this is going to change the dynamic a lot, right? Like you're doing long distance, you break up, you get back together, but now they're living in the same state. Friends said that she would show up unexpectedly. Sometimes she entered his house through the doggy door. You guys, that's so bad. Crawling through your ex-boyfriend's doggy door? Oh, Jodi, bad luck. Or she used access codes she already knew. Travis would tell her to leave, but other times he would let her stay. So it also sounds like Travis is conflicted, right? If sometimes he's like, get out of here, girl, and other times like, you know what? Why don't you stay? The boundaries were completely blurred. Meanwhile, Travis was trying to date another woman. Jodi's not going to like this. One woman, Lisa, later became part of the story because Jodi allegedly harassed her. There we go. That makes sense. That is on par. Reports say Lisa, the girl that Travis is starting to date, received strange messages. Jodi showed up where she should not have been and ran into them, and Travis's tires were slashed while he was visiting her. So eventually, Lisa stepped away because how would she not? Jodi is kind of getting crazy stalker mode right now. Looks like Jodi's turning into this obsessed, doing bad things to try to get Travis's attention vibe, which not a good look. Honestly, who could blame Lisa? Get out, cut your losses. Like it's not worth dealing with this toxic relationship happening over here. By 2008, Jodi had moved back to California and appeared to be trying to move on. She started focusing on photography and began talking to another man named Ryan Burns, who lived in Utah. So I'm assuming this was another LDS man because now she's in the LDS or Mormon faith and wants to date other members. Travis was also trying to move forward. He was interested in a woman named Mimi Hall. Cute name, girl. And had invited her on a work trip to Cancun. Okay, so now we're fully circling back, right? Okay, now we're back at his Cancun trip. But even though Travis and Jodi were technically over, they were still in contact. Toxic relationships, right? They continued having explicit conversations and emotional exchanges. Publicly, Travis seemed ready to move on. Privately, he was still letting Jodi back in. And that messy, toxic connection was about to turn deadly. No! Ugh, I wish we could always avoid this part in the story, right? In late May of 2008, a burglary, why can't I say that? A robbery. Let's just say robbery. A robbery was reported at Jodi's grandparents' home in California. According to reports, very little was taken except a handgun. That detail will later become extremely important, and I'm sure you can guess why. So, Jodi decides to go visit her new man in Utah, likely to just get over Travis. So, she ends up renting a car from a place about an hour away from her in Redding, California. They offer her a red car, but she's like, nah, I'm going to want a white car. So, she's heading up to Utah to see her new boyfriend, Ryan Burns, but between California and Utah was Mesa, Arizona. And who lives in Mesa, Arizona? Travis Alexander, the love of her life, the on and off again boyfriend. On June 4th, 2008, Jodi arrives at Travis's house. We know this because of the camera. That day, intimate photos were taken inside of Travis's home. Some showed Jodi and some showed Travis alive. The final clear photo of Travis alive was taken that afternoon. Then the images changed. The next photos were blurry, chaotic, and disturbing, and investigators believed the camera may have been dropped during the attack, accidentally capturing pieces of the struggle. After that, Travis was never heard from again. Jodi continued on to Utah and met Ryan Burns. According to him, she seemed normal, happy, and upbeat. That is one of the most chilling parts of this case, because while Travis was dead in his shower, Jodi was allegedly acting like she was arriving for a normal visit. Now that is psychotic. Disgusting. Good night. Days later, Travis's friends found his body, and now we're caught up to when the Cancun trip is supposed to be happening and no one's hearing from him. When police searched the home, they found this camera with all these photos in the washing machine. And the camera had been damaged, but investigators were able to recover the photos. Those photos placed Jodi inside of Travis's house on the day he was murdered. Go figure, right? Then investigators found something else, a bloody palm print. Testing later showed that the print contained both Travis's blood and Jodi's blood. At first, Jodi denied being involved. She told detectives she had not seen Travis during the critical timeline. But the evidence told another story, obviously. The camera placed her there. The blood placed her there. The rental car and the travel timeline lined up. And the robbery of her grandma's house, the same gun that was missing, is the same caliber of gun that was used to shoot Travis. So it's not looking good for her. It's pretty obvious who did it, right? Ex-girlfriend gone crazy. He's moving on, going on a trip to Cancun with another woman. She's like, screw this. I'm out. So luckily, in July of 2008, Jodi Arias was arrested. Yay! But once in custody, she did something she would become known for throughout the case. She changes her story again. So first, Jodi says she was not there. She was not at Travis's house the day he was murdered. Then when detectives showed her the photos, she admitted she had been at Travis's house. Okay, girl, big switch up. But she claimed two masked intruders had broken in and attacked them. This became known as the ninja story. Jodi said a man and a woman dressed in dark clothing attacked Travis, threatened her family, and let her leave alive, though. But detectives had obvious questions. Why didn't Jodi call 911? Why didn't she warn anyone? Why did she continue driving to Utah to see her new man? Why did she act normal afterward? This story obviously makes zero sense. Eventually, Jodi's going to change her story again because this is who Jodi is. This time, she admits to killing Travis. Okay, so that's new. But she claims it was self-defense. By the time the trial began in 2013, the case had become a national sensation because Jodi Arias was attractive, soft-spoken, and calm. She did not look like what people expected a killer to look like, and that made the case even more fascinating to the public. The defense argued that Travis had been abusive and that Jodi feared for her life. The prosecution argued that Jodi was jealous, obsessed, and could not accept that Travis was moving on. This seems more plausible. They pointed to the rental car, the gas cans, the missing gun, her phone location being off, and the camera evidence as proof that this was planned. Then Jodi takes the stand. I would say you're normally advised not to take the stand in your own trial, unless you have to, so whatever. So when Jodi takes the stand, obviously the trial became a must-watch television sensation event. She testified for days about sex, religion, jealousy, abuse, and her relationship with Travis. But the biggest issue was her credibility, obviously. She had already told multiple stories. First, she was not there, then intruders did it, and then she killed him in self-defense. For many jurors and viewers, that was impossible to ignore. In May of 2013, Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder. Success, because to me and to the rest of the nation, most of the nation, I would hope, this is the right call. Arizona pursued the death penalty, but two separate juries could not unanimously agree on death. So in 2015, Jodi Arias was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She remains incarcerated in Arizona today. Maybe I should go visit her the next time I'm there. Jokes, definitely do not. No, I'm okay. Not going to do that. Not now, not ever. For Travis's family, no sentence could undo what happened. They lost a son, a brother, and a friend in one of the most brutal ways imaginable. And they had to watch his private life be dissected publicly for years. That part gets forgotten in these famous cases. Families do not lose someone once. They lose them over and over again through headlines, trials, documentaries, and strangers debating the worst day of their lives. For me, what makes this case so haunting is how obsession can disguise itself as love, control can disguise itself as devotion, jealousy can disguise itself as passion. And when someone cannot accept rejection, the danger can become very real. Travis Alexander spent so much of his life trying to rise above chaos. He built a career, a community, a faith, and a future. And that future was taken away from him inside his own home by someone he once trusted. I'm absolutely devastated by this, and I wish his family the best right now, wherever they are. Thank you for listening to Meet Me for Murder. If this episode stayed with you, share it with a friend who loves true crime or someone who doesn't, and leave a review to help support the show while it's still growing. I would truly appreciate that. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and I'll meet you back here for murder.